The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. Hello, Wolfpack! This is it, the final chapter of my rapid-fire reviews on the beloved horror anthology series, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Yep, I've talked about nearly all of the tales this iconic horror show ever released. Some great, some bad, some meh, some worse than sin, and some way too good for this small world of ours. But this will be my last rapid-fire review on the show overall before we get back to the usual single-episode reviews again. Sorry I couldn't provide individual reviews for each and every one of these ghostly adventures, but copyright wouldn't let us offer the show some free publicity on an iconic classic tons of people should know about. Their loss, right? However, let's get back on track. These episodes today are my only remaining tales from Are You Afraid of the Dark, until I bring in episodes that had more than enough content or interesting material for me to work with. Overall, I thought this horror series was alright. There's definitely a lot of highlights that surprised me, but in the end, I still have very little personal attachment to this show. I didn't grow up with Are You Afraid of the Dark, so I went into this totally blind. And to this day, the haunting hour is still my jam. Sorry, Midnight Society, you had promise, but this show didn't wow me to the same extent. I only like the haunting hour more because it was improved to fit today's standards of television, while Are You Afraid of the Dark noticeably had some budget issues due to the networks having such little faith in the awesome creativity found in horror shows. Nevertheless, since everyone asked me about my thoughts on the tales from the Midnight Society, I was intrigued to see if this show truly earned all the praises it had. I've now watched every episode of the show, so you all probably want to hear what's left to love or hate. So let's stop wasting time and at long last finish these micro-reviews. These are my thoughts on the last untouched tales from the hit horror series, Are You Afraid of the Dark?
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me.
The tale of the secret admirer is, unsurprisingly, Are You Afraid of the Dark's attempt to have a scary Valentine's Day special, and it was pretty meh. In this adventure, a shy teenage girl named Maggie is thrilled to discover that she has a secret admirer who loves her, but sadly, it turns out that her fanboy is actually a ghost who haunts her because she reminds him of his original crush back when he was alive, and this time he plans to whisk her away so he won't lose her ever again. Now that puts the romance back in necromance. So basically we have a classic stalker horror story, but the guy harassing Maggie is a ghost who looks like Two-Face? What's up with all these horror show villains trying to look like Batman villains? This always happens to me. I go into a fun horror story, then suddenly, whammo! It has a villain modeled after one of Batman's rogues gallery. It's so weird. Though, to be fair, the burn effects for this guy do look much better than Schumacher's version. Anyways, Two-Face is revealed to have been a guy who stalked Maggie's mother a long time ago, but Maggie's father got into a big fight with him over the mother's affection, which led to an explosion in the woodshop class, burning half of the stalker's body, killing him. His Batman fighting days ended before they could even begin. However, many years later, the Two-Face ghost came back because he assumes that Maggie is her mother, and that's why he wants her. While this is all happening, Maggie has another crush who isn't extra crispy or dead, but he has trouble trying to get into Maggie's pants because he's a guy, and guys don't know romance. Oh, that cliché. This is a super thinly veiled attempt to have a history repeats itself gimmick, because Two-Face challenges the dumb jock to a fistfight in the woodshop class at night, so he can blow him up in the same explosion that claimed his own life. The show really cannot decide on whether or not Two-Face is a sympathetic guy who the audience is meant to see as a misguided lost soul who never knew what true love was, or a deranged loon who should be treated as a gross creeper. I really did not know what they were trying to make us feel for Two-Face. Eventually, Maggie saves the day and tells Two-Face that he never had her love, so he kills himself, and the dumb jock and Maggie survive a large explosion that should have burned down half the school.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
Then, with no natural lead-in whatsoever, Maggie decides that she likes the dumb jock now, and wants to go out with him, immediately after she just got over a stalker, and they nearly died from a ghost's wrath. Clearly this was written by a man who understands true love. Overall, I just thought this tale was meh, but then the score instantly plummeted when we got to this bullcrap. Maggie actually tells the dumb jock that she never gave him a chance because his idiot bully friends picked on her and called her rather nasty bad names. But then she says, well, if I'm going to start dating you, I might as well get used to your friends as well. That's an awful lesson to teach kids, especially young girls trying to find a boyfriend. Your friends pick on me and treat me like dirt, but I guess I need to accept that if we want to make this work. Screw that. This guy's idiot jock friends openly mocked and belittled her, calling her names like an ugly pooch, and laugh at her when she felt like she was getting stalked. Screw these people. And girls, if your boyfriend refuses to tell his own friends to treat you with human decency, then dump his ass. That's a horrible way to close out a tale of romance blooming from a dark, tragic story. Thanks, Are You Afraid of the Dark, for reminding us why love horror stories almost always fail in spectacular fashions. I give this one a bronze skull. It did have some scary moments from time to time, but then, when the story rushes through the third act, it just gets so sloppy and underwhelming after all the decent build-up. Not to mention, closing out on a pretty horrendous moral for little girls. This tale really could have been redeemed if instead of fighting discount Two-Face, Maggie fought sexy Catwomen. What? Only me? Okay. Just remember, boys and girls, never ever date a Two-Face.
Half of me wants to strangle you.
And what does the other half want?
To hit you with a truck.
We used to date.
The Tale of the Misfortune Cookie is rumored to be one of the few good tales during the infamous revival era of Are You Afraid of the Dark, but it was simply okay. Yeah, this story was decent, but I didn't really think it was the show at its best. In this tale, we follow a troubled boy named David and his emotionally distant family struggling together as their Chinese restaurant slowly loses business. David wants to be a graphic novel artist like his hero Ethan, who created the Ghastly Grinner series. Unfortunately, his tiger parents disapprove and need him to run the family business, which he doesn't want to do because his parents don't understand him and refuse to accept that their family is losing their restaurant. However, David's wise sage grandfather offers the boy some mystical fortune cookies that can change his life. As you'd expect, David opens one of the magical fortune cookies, which allows him to gain the life he always wanted, while his family also lives out their alternate life without him in it. That's right, this episode is Are You Afraid of the Dark's attempt at the It's a Wonderful Life plot, combined with minimal Chinese mythology. David thinks that his life is better without his family, but learns that his family does need him after all, and he sacrifices his personal dreams to be with his true valuable world once more. The only thing stopping David from instantly overcoming this plot is a dark samurai warrior who claims to be saving David from himself. Yes, I did say samurai, because this guy is so obviously in Japanese armor rather than the Chinese army gear. Could you tell that this was written by a white guy? While David maneuvers around this Shredder clone, we find out that his little sister has become Chloe Price? No, really. In this alternate timeline created by the magic fortune cookie, David's little sister went from a kind, shy, smart girl into a purple-haired punk prototype of Chloe Price. They were oddly similar. David rejects his new life in order to save his sister from a mediocre game sequel and combats the Dark Samurai. But then we find out that the Shredder was really David's dark side. This was actually a pretty interesting idea, but as usual, Are You Afraid of the Dark doesn't delve further into it, and the scene where he unmasks the Shredder is obviously a shout out to Star Wars. You know that one scene where Luke imagines himself unmasking Darth Vader on his vision quest, and he sees himself in the villain? Which was a clever way of foreshadowing the famous twist. Well, Are You Afraid of the Dark attempts that as well, but they don't make it entirely clear what their version was trying to say. I was honestly a bit confused. The show tries to suggest that the true antagonist was David himself, and that the Dark Warrior was meant to be David's Yang side from the Yin and Yang belief, but we never see a Yin side acting as the opposite shoulder angel assisting our kid hero, and David's pain was coming from real-world issues that were holding him back, not just his selfishness. For example, how is him wanting to go to an art school ruining the family business, or going to lead to his sister becoming Chloe Price? I get that he's at odds with himself, which was a pretty clever idea, but most of the problems were not all revolving around his personal desires. Not to mention, I think the show removing a Yin side encountering David was a total wasted opportunity, since that would have been a really cool idea to visually see both sides of the soul struggling. But whatever. So David defeats the Shredder and sets everything back to normal. His sister's not Chloe anymore, his parents do decide to let him follow his dreams after all, and they save the family restaurant by hiring a supreme Chinese chef David met in his alternate reality. One of the problems I had with this was the very schmaltzy ending. Some of Are You Afraid of the Dark's joyous endings close out on really nauseating sunshine and rainbow happiness conclusions that make My Little Pony look tame in comparison. Everyone is just so over-the-top happy, the whimsical music really hammers in the optimism, and everything ends a little too perfectly for a horror adventure. It's just something that has not held up well in a few places for me. But in the end, the misfortune cookie was alright. It wasn't a fantastic Are You Afraid of the Dark episode that blows your mind. It's just, It's a Wonderful Life mixed in with minimum Chinese myths that don't teach us too much about real Asian culture. Thank goodness Nick learned from that experience. I think there's no harm in checking this one out, since it does have some incredible ideas and very nice scenes, so I can recommend it for everyone, but will warn you that it's not too impressive. I give this one a silver skull. You know what would have made it better? If David fought some sexy cat women.
Hella yes! Big girl, big girl, big girl, come on, big boy.
The Tale of the Mystical Mirror is pretty much Are You Afraid of the Dark's version of the Twilight Zone story Queen of the Nile. For those of you who don't know, both stories are about a conceited narcissistic beauty queen using dark magic to steal the life force from unsuspecting fools and using it to make themselves younger, immortal, and eternally beautiful. We follow some shy girl named Cindy who works for a famous supermodel named Mrs. Valenti at a beauty salon, but evidently Mrs. Valenti is secretly abducting her moronic employees to drain them of their beauty by turning them into dogs. Really, are you afraid of the dark? Really? The evil beauty queen uses dark magic to absorb beauty, making herself hot, while the innocent girls who aren't pretty anymore become dogs? Yeah, this was easily the stupidest part of the whole episode for me. The victims get transformed into ugly dogs who Mrs. Valenti must murder in a satanic ritual to keep her beauty forever, until the next time she must enact this ritual again. Yeah, it seems Satan likes to haggle like that. Of course, Cindy stops the insane witch just in time and kills her by forcing herself to look into her own mystical mirror, which makes zero sense because the villain had to chant a spell to use its magic while Cindy doesn't need to.
Great continuity.
And she saves everyone, learning a valuable lesson about loving yourself for who you are. This episode was pretty decent, and was much better than what the descriptions made it out to be. The villain transforming girls into stupid dogs instead of outright killing them with her magic was kind of dumb, and there were quite a few idiot moments here and there. Oh, not from our heroes, but instead from our villain. This villain does so many stupid things just so the heroes can come out on top, but it just comes across as painfully contrived since she screws herself over a lot. She actually keeps hundreds of portraits of herself hanging around her house with the dates of every decade listed on them, giving away that she's 1,000,000 years old. She tries to bargain with the kid hero in a desperate attempt to get her mystical mirror back, and she doesn't even hide how creepy she is. She was just no Scary Mary. Nevertheless, this tale was pretty fun and creepy in the end, so I can say that it was good, but not great. I give this one a gold skull. You know what would have made it better? If it had sexy cat women. Okay, I'll level with you. I was actually planning to give this episode its own review, but then I decided, no. Why should I give this episode a well-put-together half-hour-long review video when this tale couldn't be bothered to give us a good horror story? Because if they didn't care, why should I? The Tale of the Full Moon is one of the worst episodes this show ever gave us. Whenever somebody makes a top 10 worst episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark list, this episode is almost always bound to be listed on it because it was that bad. The Tale of the Full Moon is the poop de fromage of Are You Afraid of the Dark. It takes an interesting concept, then plays it up as a stupid juvenile comedy that simply sucks, thanks to sinking to the lowest common denominator. This episode is about two stupid pet detectives trying to solve the mystery of where all the neighborhood pets have disappeared to. But they soon theorize that their mysterious new neighbor might be the culprit, because he's really a werewolf. Yeah, this episode takes a huge turn into the stupid really quickly. The bumbling pet detectives harass some new guy who moved in across the street because they want to expose him as a werewolf. But just to make this even more humorous, it turns out that one of the boys' mother is dating the Wolfman, prompting the heroes to stop him even more. Since, you know, it wasn't bad enough that pets were getting murdered around the block, but it was more important when the werewolf might become the hero's stepfather. How noble. The kids do many, many unfunny, awful actions to stop the new neighbor, like breaking into his house, filming him through his windows, stalking him, and one of the boys even stabs him with a silver fork in front of his mother to expose his werewolf side. Yeah, these kids were not very funny or likable protagonists. Their stupidity solidified that. Eventually, they break into the neighbor's house again to steal proof, but it turns out that the werewolf was really the old guy's twin brother, who pops up at the right jump scare time to give a lousy Scooby-Doo chase scene, but the neighbor saves them before they can all die. He tells the boys that he's really a good guy, and he's been trying to keep his werewolf brother on a leash chained up in the attic. You see, he's not the werewolf killing on the block. His brother is the werewolf, except he's not a werewolf. He's an ill guy with a special condition that makes him seem like a werewolf. But
What the fuck are you talking about?
I have no clue what the show was going for when the old man tells the kids that his twin brother has a special condition that makes him feel like a werewolf. But all it did was add confusion to something as simple as a werewolf story. Oh, and it turns out that the main kid's mother also knew about her boyfriend's werewolf brother all along, because apparently he brought it up on their third date. Isn't it always that way, girls? You meet a nice guy, you have a friendly romantic evening, they drop the "I have a werewolf for a brother" card, and it's all nothing but smooth sailing from there. This felt especially infuriating because not only did this episode have the oh-so-classic adults are useless cliche, and have her not believe her own son that there was a wolfman on the block despite him showing her video evidence of it, but apparently she did eventually believe the concept when her mysterious new boyfriend told her on their third date. Oh, but it gets straight up even stupider when she reveals that he proposed to her on their third date and they're getting married. So now the pet detective not only has a new father, but now he can take in this grown 40-year-old man with a werewolf condition in as their new pet. And he likes that. He actually accepts all that and has no problem taking in a 40-year-old man with a mental illness that makes him act like a feral, savage, mentally challenged person as his own dog. What? But the part that guaranteed my hatred of this episode is when our kid hero, the pet detective who swore to protect all the innocent cats, dogs, and other animals that were killed on the street, completely blows off all the dead animals just to have his own dog. Wow. Just wow. This comedy episode had innocent cats, dogs, and bunnies slaughtered in it, but they close out on an uplifting note about a child finally gaining a pet he can call his own. Except it's not a pet, it's a mentally disabled guy who has a condition that makes him think he's a werewolf. What the hell was this? This episode was the definition of stupid. Don't watch it. I give this tale a decayed skull and a huge 0 out of 10 for downplaying cat deaths. You know what could have saved this abomination? If it had sexy werecats in it.
Dumb ways to write. So many dumb ways to write. Dumb ways to write.
Holy crap, this was a horrendous one. Quite possibly one of the worst episodes I have ever seen. Yes, it's even more awful than the full moon, the Manaha, the virtual pets, and the gruesome gourmet combined. The Wisdom Glass is the most tonally inconsistent messes the revival era ever made. This episode really cannot decide what it wanted to be. It tries to be an odd friendship tale about a rich kid and a poor kid forging a true companionship, but then it also tries to be a bizarre art house horror tale about medieval monsters punishing the boys for their crimes and pointing out their past sins. But then, it also attempts to be a comedy, filled with many stupid jokes that are painfully unfunny, and feels very much against the dark moments the story had prior. The rich kid is a prick who's thoroughly nasty and smug towards everyone, except for this one poor kid who he likes for no given reason at all, but one day he shoplifts a special video game called the Wisdom Glass that looks like it runs on graphics worse than the SNES. However, the creators of the game invite the two boys to a video game tournament out. And like colossal morons, they decide to check it out. Sadly, it turns out the video game tournament was a setup by the divine video game characters from the RPG, who want to punish the kids for stealing the game. It is never explained how the hell they know the game was stolen by them, since this underground video game world apparently runs on both magic and technology, yet instead of living in the game world itself, they just live in our reality. Huh? Just when you thought things couldn't get even more confusing, the tone of this episode reaches insane levels of madness when we meet all the game characters. We have an over-the-top hanging judge, a fairy mage advisor, a jury of masked Jawas, clowns who play card games with video game discs, yes, seriously, and the worst of all these characters is the comic relief gesture lawyer, the Ghastly Grinner. Yeah, you can call him whatever you want, but he's clearly a guy wearing a slightly modified Ghastly Grinner costume. The kids endure a hilariously boring kangaroo court, but the rich kid throws the poor kid under the bus to get away scot-free, ditching the poor kid to get beheaded for his crime of stealing a video game. You know, for kids. But just as he's about to leave, his stupid limo driver pulls out this massively contrived friendship is magic speech where the rich kid has a change of heart and decides to save his poor best friend because that's what true loving friends really do. They launch a badly choreographed jailbreak scene. Rich kid saves broke kid from the problems that he himself caused, and the stupid Ghastly Grinner accidentally breaks the magic crystal ball that their whole world needs to live on, thus dooming their entire society. Again, the tone of this tale just flows so well, doesn't it? And in the end, both the kids get recaptured and die. Yep, after all that friendship is magic crap, both the kids still die in the end.
Is this some kind of cool joke?
It kind of makes you think that the rich kid leaving his pal behind to die was actually the right thing to do, since he could have escaped alive and well, but by going back to save him, they both ended up dead. So remember, kids, it's okay to leave your friends behind in a mess that you caused, because if you try to be good, you're rewarded with an impending death. What an awful way to conclude a children's adventure. Not to mention the crowning jewel of horrendous tone shifts. One minute we have the Ghastly Grinner screwing around and breaking important stuff that could doom a civilization played up as a joke, but then we have the main characters, who are children, getting dragged to their deaths. This episode sucked. The rich kid is very unlikable, the poor kid is a blank slate, the supernatural characters were plain stupid, the plot is a mess, the scary moments fail every time when we cut to an unfunny gag, the humor was garbage, and the emotional moments were ruined by very nasty, mean-spirited plot twists. Screw this episode. I recommend taking a dump rather than watching this, because at least when your bathroom time is over, you feel so much better by the end. Screw the writing, screw the comedy, screw all the characters, and most importantly, screw the wisdom glass. Congratulations, Are You Afraid of the Dark? You made the Don't Go to Sleep of your hit series. I give this one a decayed skull and a 0 out of 10. You know what could have earned at least one pity point? Having sexy Catwoman in it. The Tale of the Prisoner's Past is now the 30th time Are You Afraid of the Dark does the Ghost Redemption story. Yep, again. Are You Afraid of the Dark is doing this ghost story about the ghost scaring the heck out of little kids before revealing himself to actually be a good guy all along who only needed to redeem himself in order to be at peace once and for all, again. Yet, it actually managed to be the worst attempt at this plot so far. We follow two stepbrothers who don't like each other, accidentally getting a ghost convict to follow them home, where the ghost tells them his sob story about how he wants to say his final goodbye to his living daughter so he can move on to the afterlife. It's as uninspiring as it sounds out loud. The two siblings are really badly written characters to the point where my friend Blacksmithorange and I just labeled them Molly and Nate because they are pretty much exactly like Molly and Nate from the Failbomb Mrs. Worthington. They have no sweet moments together, and the very second we're meant to see them rebuilding their friendship with one another feels so emotionally hollow that you don't believe it. The episode also wants us to feel sorry for this ghost convict guy and his desperate plea to see his daughter one last time, but I don't think we ever know what his crimes were that landed him in prison in the first place. For all we know, he could have molested little boys, ate babies, and murdered countless people, yet the story wants us to cry for a ghost convict. The twist on how he died was also so stupid that it made me laugh at how idiotic it was because of the numerous plot holes surrounding it. I'll cut to the chase. They redeem the stupid ghost, the stepbrothers love each other now, and the episode fails to make us feel for it, since this is now the upteenth time we've seen the ghost resting in peace plot. I honestly cannot believe that we're still doing this plotline. This is now the 5th season of the show, and we're still pulling out this the ghost was a good guy all along twist, and needed to be at peace story arcs. This, the ghost needs to finish their unfinished business plotline, has now been officially overused on this show, and I'm sick of it. Tell me, is it wrong that I got tired of a formula that has been repeated to death on a show that's supposed to be this grand horror anthology series with a new idea on every episode? We're on season 5! We're on the show's halfway point, and they're still doing this stupid twist where the ghost was a good guy who just needed to be at peace. But now it's just stale. This episode is stale. It's old. This one had less than 1/4 of the effort put in to make it different and showed nothing unique about it that wasn't stupid. Yet Are You Afraid of the Dark still sticks to this formula. They've had a ghost redemption arc twice every season, but it just kept losing its flavor until the point where they started getting less thought out and ridiculous in the end. And just in case you all think I'm overblowing this overdone ghost redemption formula, well, guess what? This tale of suspense was immediately followed up by The Tale of C7, which was, surprise, surprise, another freaking ghost redemption story. I'm done. I'm just done with all these hundreds of Are You Afraid of the Dark ghost redemption arcs. They were once cool tales, and even The Haunting Hour did some awesome versions of this plotline as well, but Are You Afraid of the Dark just kept getting repetitive with it. The Tale of the Prisoner's Past is just another generic cliché storm of an overdone storyline with nothing added in to make it stand strong on its own. This tale was a poorly written snorefest, and I don't recommend it. I give this one a decayed skull, and I'm fine without seeing it ever again. You know what could have made it more unique? If it had sexy Catwomen in it. I hope the Multiverse 1 is watching this, because this episode is finally his dream horror story, since it involves a haunted speed car race, and it was unexpectedly decent. Now, this episode wasn't perfect or even gold standard, but it was actually perfectly entertaining in a low-key way. In this adventure, we follow two brothers who of course don't get along with one another, but they soon purchase a haunted muscle car, which drags them into Silent Hill for a drag race against an ominous trucker. Not going to lie, it starts out very slow, but definitely picks up pace as it goes on. One of the weirdest moments in this is where we actually get a montage of the brothers fixing up the muscle car so it's ready for riding. It's so odd, they play up the 80s music and everything. I think this is one of the rare times where Are You Afraid of the Dark had a montage in it. It's just surprising. So the car takes them to Highway 13, aka Discount Silent Hill Road, where they meet up with the car's previous ghost owners, who also happen to be two brothers who never got along, and they tell the heroes that they must win a race against the trucker they challenged a long time ago, in order for them to ascend into heaven and release the kids from Silent Hill. At first, the brothers refuse and try to leave, but naturally, this being a ghost town, they can never escape. My favorite moments in this whole story are all the creepy imagery of the truck stalking them, and the bizarre camera angles making a truck look foreboding. It's amazingly well done for a story with haunted cars in it. As you can guess, the brothers all unite to race the trucker, but upon finally hearing the ghost's origin story, we find out that the ghost brothers were the ones who caused the car accident that claimed all their lives. They challenged this big scary trucker guy to a race, but the irresponsible brother got them all killed in a car crash because he refused to lose a race that he started. So the immature living human brother finally grows up and loses the race on purpose, allowing the ghost truck to win, where it's revealed that this was the true action they had to do in order to escape the Hell Highway. The Ghost Brothers were supposed to lose this whole time and allow the Ghost Trucker to win, but the older Ghost Brothers' massive ego prevented that this whole time because he wanted to win. Yeah, this is why Highway 13 didn't get a gold skull from me. The twist was pretty weak, but I honestly like the message about how we should let go of our need to prove ourselves, since sometimes proving how better you are above common sense leads to so much pain and horrific consequences. That's a pretty good lesson that holds up amazingly well by today, so it certainly wasn't a total loss for me. So the Ghost Brothers and the mystery trucker all ascend into heaven, while the living bros finally get along, and are forced to walk home. Wow, that's kind of a dick move on the ghosts' part. Have fun hitchhiking down the highway back to the suburbs, kids. However, this also had another issue I hold with the episode. The ending drags on forever. This episode has so many golden opportunities to simply conclude on a good note, but every time they follow it up with another scene that pads out the conclusion. The Ghost Brothers ascend into heaven, but then the human brothers get their moment to apologize for being mean to one another. But then, the brothers walk all the way home talking about how cars are so overrated. But then, the ghost trucker shows up to thank them for helping him leave the hell world. Then he drives his truck through a portal to heaven. But then, we get even more of the everyone jokes ending as the brothers walk home. But then, the Midnight Society talk about the meaning of this story even longer than it already is. Good lord, this episode has more endings than Return of the King. Once it did finally close out, I thought this episode was alright. It has a ton of awesome horror imagery in it, and a good moral for everyone about keeping our egos in check, but it wasn't flawless. So I give this road trip horror story a silver skull. It was decent, but did hit some bumps in the road. You know what would have made it perfect? If it had sexy catwomen. The Tale of the Photo Finish was one of the rare decent episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark's revival era, since it offered us a fun premise, a dark villain, and a decent horror story. This tale does have some plot holes scattered here and there, but I think most viewers can get some amusement out of what it has to offer. In this tale, we follow two prep school boys named Chandler and Alex, who are trying to join a snotty school club dubbed the Lion Society. But Alex can't get in, since he's not a legacy like his dude bro, causing a friendship rift between the two. Things only get worse when Chandler follows an initiation ceremony where he must break into the headmaster's office to steal a portrait. But of course, the painting he takes is haunted by a ghost. The spirit turns out to be a bully victim named Jasper, who captures the souls of Lion Society members in his Silent Hill world, since he craves revenge for being bullied by them. And of course, Alex has to step in to save his ex-best friend, stop the villain, and become proud of who he is. There's quite a few pointless characters and idiot moments around this one, but nothing too damaging to the overall plot. It just felt like unrequired padding. My favorite moment in this one is how Alex outwits the ghost of Jasper, because it was done in a really clever way. However, as usual, my most hated moments in this were all the plot holes. The biggest one being that the ghost of Jasper has been hiding his whole existence in his old house, which is right on the school's campus, yet somehow nobody was able to locate him or find all the missing students he abducted. No joke, the portal to his ghost dimension is actually right through his own front door. This villain's whole plan could have easily fallen apart if the mailman absent-mindedly crossed his welcome mat. Like, are you kidding me? Are You Afraid of the Dark? That's a pretty huge thing to overlook. Regardless, the hero beats Jasper, saves the victims who are trapped in his portraits, they escape unharmed, and the two best friends mend their relationship. It was okay, but it had some very noticeable flaws and cartoonish side characters. I'd give it a silver skull. It has some great moments, but it is held back by some of the goofier and nonsensical parts. You know what would have made it worth 1,000 words? If there were some pictures of sexy catwomen. The Tale of the ReAnimator was a very strange parody of the horror comedy movie The ReAnimator, and it was kind of hit and miss. In this story, we follow a little girl named Julie who works at a local flower shop, where she soon discovers that her strange boss is using the flower shop as a front to test an elixir that resurrects dead plants, and once perfected, dead people. Ah, I see you copied the elixir from the Guardian's Curse. Sweet steal. However, the worst character in the whole episode, Julie's idiot bully big brother, takes the elixir and accidentally dumps it on a cemetery, which revives a zombie. At first, this episode does rely on some very scary imagery and super effective build-up that is amazingly utilized, up until we actually see the zombie. And oh boy, this zombie was the worst monster this show ever made. I kid you not, the zombie that we build up to and obscure with very creepy shadows until that big reveal is actually a guy dressed up in a ripped suit, growling and covered in slime. Yeah, the episode really became disappointing when the zombie enters the spotlight, because he is the fakest monster this show has. See what I mean when I point out how the show's budget was its own worst enemy? Even the scary visuals and dread couldn't salvage the monster when he pops up. We get a long Scooby-Doo chase scene of the zombie stalking the kids because apparently the monster wants more of the elixir of life for some reason, but Julie and her idiot brother lure it into a trap, killing it for good since heat kills anything that consumes the elixir. So basically the kids could have killed the zombie easily if they kept awake until the morning and let the sun finish the job. But since we needed a plot, they do this long Scooby-Doo routine. Overall, I thought the ReAnimator was half good, but what chained it down were all the stupid moments, the wasted opportunities, and especially the lame monster design. A darn shame, because I thought this episode had more hope than some of the other revival tales did. But too bad. I grant this tale a bronze skull. It was half a good Are You Afraid of the Dark tale, but also half a cheap, stupid mess. You know what would have been better than a zombie monster? Some sexy catwomen. The Tale of the Zombie Dice was honestly one of the few episodes I dreaded going into because the title was not exactly a comforting selling point. I mean, come on, this episode is called The Tale of the Zombie Dice. It just sounded so stupid. However, much to my utter shock, this episode was actually pretty darn good. I dare say this one was one of the best episodes on this video. No, really, this tale was a great success because it was so much fun that I couldn't help but get sucked into the insanity and over-the-top amusement this had. In this story, we follow Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon, getting mocked by his gamer friends since he's too afraid to take chances and is often called a grandma for his cowardice. I'm not a grandma. However, a mysterious underground arcade comes into town, controlled by a man named Mr. Click, who is an obvious clone of the Riddler, because he loves mind games, gambling against others, testing the wits of other players to prove how smarter he is compared to them, and plots evil schemes to make a quick buck. Yeah, he's pretty much the Riddler in all but name. One of Hiccup's overconfident gaming friends challenges the Riddler in a special game called the Zombie Dice, where they would shoot a special pair of dice while gambling with high stakes. Yeah, it's pretty much a common dice game, but with special designed dice. Big shock, the idiot friend loses, so the Riddler now owns his soul, and has the kid taken to his secret lab, where his zombie minion shrinks the child down to the size of the atom, where he plans to sell off hundreds of micro-children to people across the world for profit. Of course. Really, this guy's whole evil scheme is to shrink kids and sell them to evil rich guys. By the way, the Riddler is not an alien or a supernatural monster man. He's just a normal guy. He's just a normal guy. He's just a normal guy who has zombie minions, access to shrinking technology, and makes his billions selling shrunken children to Damien Dark. I seriously wish I was making this stuff up. As you can all predict, Hiccup challenges the Riddler to a game in order to save his stupid friends, where he admittedly outsmarts the villain in a pretty brilliant fashion, causing the Riddler to lose everything. It was actually very impressive and felt like the character truly earned his victory, growing as an impressive character who saves the day and grows a spine. The Riddler loses his business and money, but when he tries to flee Gotham, his zombie goon betrays him, and I think he either shrinks him down or straight up kills him. I don't know, it's never fully elaborated on, and when Hiccup asks where the Riddler went to, the goon just says he's gone for good. So, problem solved, I guess. The kids respect Hiccup now, the Riddler is defeated and gone, black markets can no longer profit off of shrunken children, and we close out on a well-earned happy ending. In the end, I felt that this tale was very much one of the few fun stories from Are You Afraid of the Dark, since it was full of really clever moments, a silly supervillain who does pose as a credible threat, and likable main characters. So, I grant this one a gold skull, but not a perfect score on account of the rushed resolution. I do recommend seeing this one if you want to see Are You Afraid of the Dark at its funnest. The only thing that would have given it a perfect score was if it had sexy Catwomen.
Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
The Tale of the Hunted was Are You Afraid of the Dark's attempt to give us a big animal rights story, teaching children to embrace nature and cherish the peaceful animals who live within the forests, such as the wolves. And it was amazingly dull, because this was one of the most boring experiences of my whole life. In this tale, a female poacher named Diana is camping out in the woods with her hunting family in order to track down a legendary wolf to kill and take home as a trophy. However, this mysterious legendary wolf is actually a wise sage forest spirit who curses Diana by turning her into a wolf. So now, she will know what it's like to be hunted down by them stupid humans, as she tries to retreat from her own family of hunters who mistakenly assume that Diana died and she was the wolf who killed her. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we found the brother bear of Are You Afraid of the Dark. We have a bland, unimaginative cliché storm of a plot about a hunter becoming the hunted, while also learning to appreciate the trees and such. But unlike Brother Bear, it has zero gorgeous animation or songs to back it up. This episode's largest problem is that it is boring. Good lord, this one is the most slow, unimpressive, unexciting, dullest horror story I have ever watched on this show. It makes The Room for Rent look like The Green Mile in comparison. It was more boring than that tale. I make no exaggeration when I tell you that there are long amounts of nothing happening in this story. There is so much emptiness in this plot, and it drags on and on and on. No joke, a good half of this story is spent with Diana in her wolf form, running around the forest being hunted, and teaming up with this other wolf who adopts her into its pack. But you know how some animal transformation stories have the animals speak to each other or allow the viewers to listen to their inner thoughts to understand their feelings? Well, Are You Afraid of the Dark doesn't do that. Wolf Diana and her wolf friend do not talk or make it clear what they're thinking all throughout this whole episode. We're stuck for more than half the story following two silent wolves who can't convey visual storytelling nor speak at all, rendering this entire tale of suspense super dull. The wolves don't speak or think? How are we supposed to understand what's going on when the wolves don't make it clear? Hope you love YouTube videos featuring animals doing tricks, because that's actually more than what we get from this snooze fest. People actually asked me to do a crossover review on this one with my brother Wolf, just because it has wolves in it. Really, folks? This slow as hell torture was what you wanted to see us talk about together? Well, I'll try. Hey, Wolf, do you want to do a crossover review on an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode with me?
Ha! No.
Well, that's that. Anyways, after hours of walking through the forest, Wolf Diana is able to convince her family that she's their daughter because apparently her father recognizes her eyes in the poor defenseless wolf's eyes.
Bullshit!
And that somehow magically restores Diana back to a human because this whole nightmare was all just a test to teach her family a lesson about not hunting animals for fun. Why didn't the wolf ghost just transform the whole family into wolves then? Seriously, the wolf only goes after Diana when her whole family were also poachers who massacred hundreds of wolves for fun too. Yet she's the only one that needed a karmic transformation. This wolf ghost is a moron. But hey, Diana's family did learn a lesson, so everything's all peachy, right? Wrong. Because just as the hunting family happily reunites, the Midnight Society also say that everything Diana encountered in this whole episode when she was in a wolf's body all just felt like a bad dream to her, so she didn't remember anything. So essentially, our main character forgot everything in her spirit quest, and she learned nothing. Geez, this was bad. I suppose I can grant it a single pity point for having a good message about not harming animals, but this whole episode was a snore, and our main protagonist forgot everything, rendering her whole story moot. Just skip this episode. I only recommend watching it if you need a good cat nap, because I sure as heck felt like sleeping during this travesty. I give it a decayed skull. It had a decent moral, but also should have had more sexy cat women. Initially, I tried avoiding this episode until I could toss it into the last micro review video, since the idea on this tale sounded incredibly stupid, and I was afraid that it would lead to a terrible horror story on account of how ridiculous it seemed upon first glance. But I'm happy to say that after finally watching this episode, I was totally right. This was a terrible, scary story like I thought it would be. The Tale of the Dream Machine was just another nonsensical, plot hole-ridden, dull-as-heck mess. In this story, we follow an inspiring writing student who finds a magic typewriter that can make all his stories become a reality. And as you can guess, this leads to many nightmarish hijinks when he stupidly writes horror stories with his own friends as the characters in them. Yeah, pretty much this tale relies on the oh-so-classic idiot plot where every character must act like a moron in order to set the story in motion. Yay, the same concept that everyone loves in dead serious horror stories. There is only one. Count one scary scene in this whole tale, but the episode constantly tries redoing it again and again to the point where it became comical how the climax relied on it one last time. This entire conflict could be easily resolved if none of the characters read the stories written by the haunted typewriter out loud or stopped using the typewriter entirely. But of course, since we needed a plot, everyone reads the ghost stories out loud because contrived writing dictates it. Like a total moron, our protagonist realizes that he accidentally turned in his horror story he wrote on the magic typewriter to his English class. And since the episode is contrived, the stupid fat teacher lady reads it out loud in her own private office at school. So of course, his best friend is endangered, and he has to race to the school with his bland girlfriend to save the day. Oh, and here's where the episode gets insulting. This episode has a ton of fat jokes surrounding the overweight teacher, and her being fat is seriously a major plot point in the story, because she's so busy stuffing her fat face with cafeteria food that the main characters have time to race to the school to edit the horror story's ending and save their pal. Could you tell that this was written back in the 90s? Because that was the last decade where the fat-shaming jokes were at their highest. I don't even get why we needed jokes in this episode. The whole story is pretty serious for half of it, up until we turn into a stupid comedy with fat jokes in the final act. It's so jarring how the writers shifted into a new tone without any levity. And I do mean it when I say the fat jokes regarding the overweight teacher get downright insulting. In one instance, they can't find the teacher in her office because she's so busy looking for more food to eat, and she steals lunches from the kitchen. So the kids take the time to retype on the haunted typewriter to edit the protagonist's essay. Hey, wait a minute. How come you kids didn't just type the story at your own house if the magic typewriter alters the story at any point in time and instead wasted hours running to the school to find your fat teacher? This whole episode feels like a first draft. Oh, but don't worry, we get even more fat jokes. The kids only have more than enough time to type the whole rewrite in her office because the teacher's in the bathroom. And she is literally so fat that she's taking hours to take a dump. That's really a plot point, folks. The fat cow is taking a large dump just to buy our heroes more time. I'm so sure all the Husky viewers are feeling good about themselves right now. Unsurprisingly, they saved their friend just in time since there were no stakes in this conflict, and they only had an eternity to do all this. But even still, this episode has one of the most awkward endings I've ever seen on this show. The stupid fat teacher finally comes back after 80 years, but when she asks what they're all doing in her office, the kids just shrug comedically and it's over. Yeah, this episode has no solid ending. It just ends like a frickin' 80s comedy filler episode. The kids shrug comedically, the episode closes out, and we get one last fat joke where the teacher glares at the kids before shoving a large donut in her mouth, chewing it very slowly. Do you get it, everyone? She's fat! Fat people deserve to be mocked and shamed. Thanks for teaching the children that lesson, Are You Afraid of the Dark? This episode sucks. It sucks. Not only were the fat jokes dated beyond all belief, but this tale was so boring. It's just so painfully, unbearably boring. This episode was sluggishly dull, the conflict was unimaginative, the main characters were all blank slates, the comedy is awkward, and worst of all, it didn't even know how it wanted to end. Now that I think about it, how could reading the stories out loud send people into the fictional worlds if they don't teleport to the world while the writer is reading the stories as he first types them?
Great cat! Ow!
Ha! I got you! I finally got you! Enough games, RoboCat! Who are you?
Pink's the name! Dr. Pink! But my friends call me Pinky! With a
Die! Die! Die!
And I am not a nutbag!
Didn't you say all this before?
It's called a running gag!
Of course. So what do you want? Why do you keep visiting our channel?
Big things are coming, kitty cat! Very big things! Whose side are you going to be on? Mine or the losers?
What? Sides? What are you talking about?
Oh, I wouldn't want to spoil the surprise. Just know this, little kitten. You better pick my side if you know what's good for you. We can be your bestest friends or your worst enemies.
We? Who's we?
You'll see. Buzzies!
House, did you see that?
I sure did, buddy, but she blocked her signal. I can't locate her. It's as if she's not of this world.
Dang. Keep security up, House. We're going to need all the help we can get. But enough of my boring stories. Let's finish up this boring story. The Tale of the Dream Machine sucked, and is one of this show's most lackluster horror stories. Stick with the blob that ate everyone, or brush with madness. I grant this fail bomb a decayed skull. It had some potential, but ultimately, it didn't know what it wanted to do with any of it. You know what really could have helped this episode? Another draft, since the final one was still flawed. We finally made it. The Tale of the Silver Sight is Are You Afraid of the Dark's 3-part special, serving as a love letter to all the show's dedicated fans, reveals the lore of the Midnight Society, grants us a film-length horror tale, and received critically acclaimed praise as being the greatest story from Are You Afraid of the Dark of all time. I thought it was overhyped. Yeah, I said it. I thought this was Are You Afraid of the Dark's most overrated story ever. After hearing all the fan praise and songs and dance numbers about how the Silver Sight is the #1 story arc, I went in expecting a lot, but was severely disappointed when it didn't turn out as epic as I thought it would be. Relax, everyone. I didn't think it was a piece of crap, but I don't really see it as the master horror story ever written, nor do I think it's Are You Afraid of the Dark at its best. The Silver Sight was okay. It was an okay episode. That's just how I feel on it. In this 3-part story arc, Gary from the original Midnight Society comes back to his old hometown when his grandpa passes away, but he finds that his grandfather left him a mystery to solve regarding some lost trinket the original Midnight Society from the 1930s hid away in an unknown area to keep out of the hands of evil. This trinket was dubbed the Silver Sight, an all-powerful artifact that can bend reality, but nobody knows if it even exists or not. And naturally, the grandfather wants Gary to find this Silver Sight to destroy it once and for all. So Gary allies himself with the new generation of the Midnight Society to solve the scavenger hunt for the Silver Sight. However, here's where we get to one of the problems I had. This is not the original Midnight Society. Gary and Tucker are the only original cast members we've seen back in the first season, while the majority of the Midnight Society members helping them out on this are the new team members. And the show didn't exactly give them all notable personality traits. I could not tell you a single unique trait about each and every one of these new generation Midnight Society members, even if my 9 lives depended on it. At least the old school members had personalities and character archetypes to set them apart. These kids have nothing, so I had very little investment in the new cast members, since they don't give anything noteworthy in this epic story arc, other than just being audience surrogates learning about the Silver Sight lore for the viewers. Not helping matters is the very straightforward plot that could have been easily trimmed down to a 2-parter. There are long amounts of padding found in this special, to the point where I realize that a lot of it was drawn out filler that wasn't needed. The Silver Sight is a vague MacGuffin that should be interesting on its own, but we get all these lousy detours of the Midnight Society wandering around endlessly, boring the audience. But there are some positive traits that were on here too. The current Midnight Society actually go ask help from all the former Midnight Society members back from the past, who are all old now. And in a very clever decision, all the old members are played by former Are You Afraid of the Dark actors. I will admit that it was pretty sweet to see some of these old characters return as video game helpers for the heroes. It was really cool. The old Midnight Society members include Shandu from The Magician's Assistant, the evil alien principal Mr. Taylor from The Tale of the Hatching, the cynical nanny from The Tale of the Lonely Ghost, the grandpa from The Tale of the Room for Rent, the ghost drama teacher from The Tale of the Walking Shadow, and the ominous photographer from The Tale of the Curious Camera. I will admit that this was a pretty cool concept, and I liked seeing some of these key players return for this special since they were very entertaining to say the least. Apparently, all the old members have pieces to a puzzle that can help the current Midnight Society solve the mystery, and they must endure many dangerous trials in order to get them. But one of the old members is secretly a traitor! And he plans to turn against his cohorts to get the Silver Sight all for himself. This could have been a genuinely good villain, but unfortunately he wasn't the real antagonist. Which disappointed me, because the real villain was a total letdown. So everyone, the Midnight Society wants to find a legendary artifact that can alter the entire universe, and face many Tomb Raider challenges to get to it. But who do you think is going to be the ultimate mastermind working from behind this madness trying to stop them? A ghost child that looks like Joey King! Yes, this is our main villain. The Midnight Society is trying to save the world by taking on a ghost child who looks like Joey King.
Lame.
Yeah, this is why I don't think this episode is all that great. Our villain is the weakest part of this whole story arc. Ghost Joey King is not scary, not complex, not intelligent, not well written, poses almost no threat to the heroes, and worst of all, its motivations make no sense at all. Ghost Joey King is apparently the physical personification of the Silver Sight itself, but the ghoul cannot decide on whether or not it wants to kill the Midnight Society or help them find the Silver Sight faster so it can manipulate them. I was really underwhelmed that Joey King was a poorly written antagonist, since you'd kind of expect Are You Afraid of the Dark to go all out with the mysterious monster the kids have to overcome, since their ferocious beasts were always cool. Yet this ghost was not. It's kind of like the case for the villain of the Guardians of the Galaxy. You remember how everybody praised the heck out of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie for its fun atmosphere, enjoyable storytelling, and beloved characters, yet the only thing people agreed on sucking was the lame villain? Well, the Silver Sight suffers from this too. The story is pretty decent, and the characters have some fun moments, but the ultimate villain is the worst part holding back the story. Ghost Joey King was apparently behind all these obstacles to secretly test the Midnight Society if they were worthy of finding the Silver Sight. But apparently, the Ghost also gives them advice and assistance on where they must find clues, contradicting the villainous end goal a whole lot and making their motive utterly confusing. Seriously, the Ghost flip-flops back and forth so much that it broke my mind. Eventually, the Midnight Society finally locates the Silver Sight, which was hidden in a carnival carousel, where it's revealed that the Silver Sight artifact this whole time is actually an Infinity Stone. Yes, really, it's just an Infinity Stone. The Silver Sight is a shiny small rock that can warp reality itself and bring ultimate power. It's just an Infinity Stone. Ghost Joey King comes out to sarcastically applaud them and brags about how the Silver Sight brought everything and everyone all together because it's the beginning and the end, and other generic doomsday dialogue. Things kind of get ridiculous when the old Midnight Society members also come to the carnival as well, completely out of nowhere. Yes, even the traitor comes back. There is no explanation as to why or how all the living Midnight Society members just show up at the Silver Sight's hiding place. They're just here. Brilliant writing, as you can tell. But big shock, Gary uses the Silver Sight to destroy itself, which kills Ghost Joey King forever, because he refuses to use the Infinity Stone for evil purposes, since he's a good guy.
You always win when you are good.
But just when you think it's all over with the Infinity Stone shattered, Gary at peace, the traitor being good, the Midnight Society stronger than before, and everyone living happily ever after, our twist ending reveals that this was all just one big story being told by the old Midnight Society as kids. Meaning that absolutely nothing we just saw was real, and it was all total bullcrap. Wow, what a waste of time that was. I suppose I shouldn't be too harsh though, since after all, this tale did have the Midnight Society uncovering an Infinity Stone, and Tucker pulling off some Captain America-style fighting moves, even though he showed no skills in anything whatsoever. But that's it, none of it really happened. The end. Despite my heavy cynicism, this episode was alright. Just alright. I think it's very overblown as the greatest Are You Afraid of the Dark tale we ever had, and it really doesn't live up to all the hype everyone gives it. The plot is a decent mystery, none of the characters except for Gary really get any development, the scares were mostly good when it focused on the fridge horror of what the Silver Sight could do. The Infinity Stone they were hunting barely did anything since it's destroyed as soon as they find it. The villain was a generic I love killing people psychopath with conflicting motives, and the ending made the whole experience kind of fall flat. Nevertheless, it does have a good sense of fun to it, and if you like it, that's fine. It's not a bad flick, but it's simply an alright story arc. I think Are You Afraid of the Dark had much better episodes than this one. I loved the Tale of the Hatching, the Dead Man's Float, the Doll Maker, and even Station 109.1 more than this one, since those had much more entertaining and unique elements that worked for them. The tale of the Silver Sight is way too shielded by nostalgia for me. I'd recommend seeing it if you really love this show, but as a casual viewer, it was only a good story, not an outstanding story. So I give the critically acclaimed Silver Sight a gold skull, but not a perfect score on account of the dragged out moments and the lame Joey King ghost. You know what would have given this tale a perfect score? If it had sexy cat women. And that's the end of my final rapid-fire review on the hit horror anthology series Are You Afraid of the Dark? Sorry it was more on the negative side, but that's what I get for holding on to the tales that barely anyone loved. I didn't grow up with the show, but I think it did have more outstanding tales than the ones we had today. And don't worry, because we plan to close this all out on the greatest episodes ever, since there's still a handful left. For those of you who made it this far, I'll stop teasing you and really tell you what we have remaining. The Are You Afraid of the Dark tales that are getting their own single reviews from me include The Tale of the Night Shift, Jake the Snake, The Train Magic, and Station 109.1. I just had more than enough content about those tales because they interested me more than the ones on these style of videos. Hope you're eager to see what I have in store for those final 4 Are You Afraid of the Dark tales in the future. Don't expect me to talk about them as soon as possible, since these videos do need time, and I don't want to give it all away too early. For now, this was my final rapid-fire review for Are You Afraid of the Dark, and this series is almost over for us. As always, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I'm certain you're all awaiting in anticipation for me to finally talk about this show again real soon.